Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Peterson.
And I'm Jack Hinkle.
That was a really good opening. That clap was together, and our pitch really was close.
Took us a year of making these podcasts. We finally got it.
Yeah, this is a year ago. This week we talked to Ken Snook.
Wow. Oh, dude,
Well,
you're right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I had it in my calendar.
Yep, that's it.
So here it is. The first full week of school starts today.
We're back.
We did 3 days last week. Monday, Tuesday, teacher days. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we did not record. And then Monday, we have full day of school and marching band tonight, 6 to 8.
This is like the first full week back with a routine. Last week felt kind of odd because you're like not teaching, but you are, but you're in meetings, but you're in prep. This one, it just feels like we can roll. That feels nice. Getting the routine going again.
Yeah, I'm glad to have a routine. Get that going.
It's helpful.
So, Jack, what we're going to talk about today is...
Oh, I can't wait.
This is great. We're going to talk about... Well, we could talk about the spinny plates, like the carnival game, like the old circus act of keeping the plates spinning. And I think our colleague Heidi Snyder had talked about that in an interview earlier with us, about as a teacher how you're keeping a lot of plates going at one time.
Okay. Plates.
And also known as multitasking. Or maybe that's not multitasking, but you're planning for many plates at a time. You know, we could get into multitasking if it's actually true. Can you multitask? But
And then you had talked about multitasking in the classroom while you're always trying to assess a certain task or skill from the students. But while you're assessing that, you're formulating what you're going to tell them next.
Yeah.
How do we do that? How does that happen? Right? This doesn't make sense to me because the amount of things that we have to think about as teachers, all like within a 10-second window, the things that cross your mind. Like, okay, you're listening to your kids play something and you got 10 seconds. You're listening to them play it. You're thinking about what you're going to tell them next. You're thinking about where you're going to rehearse next. You just got an email that you remembered in your head about something that you have to do 7th period. You just remembered you have to make a printout. This kid's not looking at their music. Why are they not? There's your 10 seconds. Right?
Yeah.
That was like 6 things, and I'm sure you could come up with 4 more.
Easy.
So why is it that we're doing that, but then I go home and I'm trying to watch like an episode of something and like follow along with the plot, and I'm like, I got nothing. You with me?
You have to have the subtitle. I have to have the subtitle.
I need to have like the cliff notes, dude.
Gosh.
Like, can you just tell me what's going on?
Hey, Steve, what's going to happen in this tune?
Okay, there's hurricanes and
okay. Well, okay, here's the thing though. Spoiled is when Jack is talking, I'm usually thinking about formulating my response.
Yeah, it's the same thing in the podcast, right? I noticed you noticed that because I noticed that too, that we've done that. I remember it being really hard the first few episodes we made
Because
I wasn't used to that.
Yeah. But you formulate a response
While you're talking,
right,
every time. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that was just fascinating.
Okay, well, but that's interesting because, oh my gosh, there's so much to get into. But like in relationships, relationship 101, if you're being spoken to, your job is to listen, not about creating a response. Because you're creating a response, you're not listening.
How many times in a day do you listen to our kids have conversations? And you can just hear that they're like queued up something ready to go. It's like they're talking at a person.
All the time.
All the time.
Well, and more adults than I've...
He almost took that one back.
A lot of adults.
A lot of adults.
Not the adults in my life. Mike, my wife does not put bullets in the chamber. She listens. She does not formulate a response just to snipe mine, to blow mine up, right? To snipe that one down, which is good. But you see a lot of interactions with humans, with adults and with kids that you just said, they take a breath and they're like, and you just know they're going to go, yeah, but
And as the teacher, you're just kind of watching that and you're just going,
you're not really listening to your buddy, right?
That's like painful. And I know that's a skill we could probably teach. And I'd like to teach it someday. But, you talk about this, you and me talking to each other. I think it's a little different when we're doing this. We're trying to keep things moving.
Exactly.
And you and I know where we want to end up, and we're
Right.
both trying to drive the wheels to get us there. But in normal life conversation, it doesn't work the same way.
Right. Yeah. So that's part of one of it is like the value or the skill of having a conversation, like a true conversation with somebody. Like this is kind of a conversation, but it's kind of made for a radio.
Yeah, we're reading off the teleprompter that's back there. We write out the entire script of every episode ahead of time, just in case you couldn't tell how just prepared we are to do these.
Okay, wait. What was it?
Just read the teleprompters right there.
Oh yeah, right there. Okay. So we started talking about a jazz band today. You're playing a tune too, but it's called a second line tune. And a second line tune, right?
Dum, dum, dum,
Dun,
dum,
dun,
yeah.
dun, 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 dun. So we're playing that, and I was trying to get into the history of the second line, and what is it and why is it, and so it's the history of it is that in a traditional New Orleans, this is good. This is like a good.
We're
tangent.
educating our guests.
Yeah.
Second
So
line.
a
and
second
funerals.
line, if you Google second line groove or street beat, it is a kind of a feel that is normally played on the snare drum, but it's something that would sound very familiar to you. But the history of it is that in the tradition of New Orleans and the culture of the urban setting within New Orleans and the jazz culture down there would be that if there were a funeral, it would be a very solemn procession to the gravesite or to the church. I forget which. But like maybe to the gravesite. But it would be very solemn and kind of sway. And maybe they're playing like a Closer Walk with Thee, but it's like really slow. It's soulful. But then once the body is laid to rest in honor of like the spiritual like resurrection and the Alleluia part of the service, the funeral, then it turns into like double time is fast, and the second line, the back line kind of becomes the front line, and they do this joyous song, dance, playing their instruments, right? But the reason that it just made me laugh of it something because there was a show I watched called Your Honor. Did I ever tell you about that?
I don't think so.
I can't remember where it is. Isn't that the hardest thing about watching streaming TV? You can never remember where it is.
Hulu, Disney, Netflix,
then you just got
Freevee. Well, and you do. What do you do? The
Sling.
Sling. That's
Sling.
what it is.
Sling. But then you
Sling.
have different people that have accounts
Yep.
in your family.
Yeah, and you got all the profiles.
Right, so
and
you
you're
don't
like,
know
where are we on this?
exactly. You can't remember what episode. So there is this one called Your Honor.
Okay.
And whoever the dude that was in Breaking Bad, the guy that made that famous.
Okay.
But he was
The Walter White guy.
yes. This was it's about a judge that gets into a very corrupt situation. So it's hello. I just totally ripped my nose. Okay. On the microphone. But I said to the kids, I said, this show takes place in New Orleans. And it does, and we didn't really get into the show that much, but I said it's in New Orleans, and there is like urban scenes, and it does deal with extreme poverty, and then it does extreme wealth, and kind of the two sides of that. It involves the mob and gang life and the political system. I go, it's a political thriller, is what I said.
Okay.
And one of the students goes, well, that's what we're doing right now. We're living in a political thriller. I thought it was like so on point. I was like, hey, you didn't even need to say anything. She goes, we're living in a political thriller right now. And nobody's declared what side they're voting for or their families are from.
Just as well.
It was perfect because
That's good.
it was made for TV, So
We're living in a
we're living in a political thriller. Okay, what are we talking about? Okay, we're multicast.
thinking about 12 things at once.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So I wonder, like listening to a band, like you and I both work with jazz bands. So you have like 20 musicians. You're listening to a section of music. And you and I both would have the same kind of experience right now because we're working with an ensemble that is playing a piece of music for the first or second or third time, it's appropriate for their age and skill level, right? But there's like obvious things that are going well and obvious things that are not going well. And so it's kind of the normal bumps and, lumps of reading music and getting the band going and, just kind of figure what's going out. But you and I would say would have a very similar response, like if a band played something. Right?
Sure.
But
isn't there like a certain level of, I don't want to say skill because that's like too like next level, but I do think that it takes some time to be comfortable in the multitasking.
Yes.
When you start out teaching, the first few times you kind of have to get into that mindset of thinking about a bunch of different things at once. It was so overwhelming. I remember feeling that way. Like,
I do.
And I feel overwhelmed now, even when that stuff is happening. Like, you and I joke about like what it's like to go out to a marching band rehearsal outside. Like, okay, there's 12 handouts you have to give to every kid. 3 kids are coming up to you asking if they can go to the bathroom. One of you is telling them they're going to show up late tonight because they have some.
2 kids in Crocs.
You got 2 kids in Crocs. You got a new student today that showed up for the first time that needs an instrument.
Got a kid going to theirs.
And it's windy, so all the papers are flying everywhere. And the kids are like, "What set are we on?" You're like, I don't know. Just calm down, everybody. Calm.
And it's like
down.
windy. It's like.
Oh my gosh. And that is just like all going on in your head at one time.
Right.
And you don't have the luxury to tell people like, hey, just, I'm sorry guys, but I'm just dealing with like 12 different, because you don't do that. You're just like, okay.
Let's try it again.
So it's like all this, like, it's not even white noise. It's like every color of noise.
The rainbow noise.
And sometimes you have to shut it out. Sometimes you have to listen to one voice. Sometimes you have to listen to 3. Sometimes you have to like listen to all 12. And I'm not saying this because it's hard. It is hard, but I think it's kind of fascinating. How do we do that? How did we get comfortable doing that? How did it like just kind of slowly morph into just what we do all the time? How do we do that?
Well, I would say it's repetition, but repetition doesn't guarantee that you'd come up with a system.
No, it doesn't. But every teacher does that, right?
Right.
And you're doing that, with your content, like you're trying to teach the kids whatever it is you are doing, whether it's math, science, art, etc. You're trying to get that content. Then you're intaking, are they understanding it? Right? Your typical check for understanding. But you're also intaking like the temperature of the class. Or are they into this? Are they confused? Yeah. And then you're like trying to manage behaviors, sometimes like under the radar where you're just using your own proximity toward a kid. I was thinking about that today in piano. Like, music theory. I was doing question of the day, and dude, that AC unit in that room, the kids think I'm deaf. That's the real white noise that's going on. I'm like, what?
Gosh.
The kids are like, I was like, what's your favorite gas station snack today? That was question of the day.
And they're like,
and all I hear is and I'm like, I'm so sorry, guys. This AC vent behind me is so loud.
And then you can have them turn it off, and then it gets really hot.
And that the dehumidifier in the back of the room just gets buckets.
And then the sound system is like,
and then if a kid's cell phone is close to the piano, it goes. And then you accidentally press 12 keys on the synth. Yeah. Anyway, the kids are trying to say that stuff, and I'm noticing like a couple kids are kind of talking to each other. Maybe relevant, maybe not, I don't know. So I'm like trying to go around toward that side of the room for proximity and still trying to listen to those other kids who are speaking about their favorite gas station snack, but then still trying to listen if these other kids are talking. And like that's not even like music theory. That's just like human relations. Yeah. There was not even content involved. And I'm thinking about that. I'm like, what?
Right. I wanted to go back. You were talking about like teachers in general, but this could be a hot take.
Ooh, I love
hot takes.
Stupid already.
Isn't it stupid? Stupid hot.
I'll show you stupid.
Stupid hot take. I'll show you stupid. Okay. Isn't it different though? Isn't music different? This is a little. I'm gonna throw a little snack for our negative Nellies out there. Negative.
Here come the YouTube comments.
Nathans and Nellies.
Come at us, YouTube. Let's go.
Isn't it different though for music, speech, athletics?
Because
The event is happening real time.
whereas if you were in a math class,
You would read the problem and the execution of the answer.
you're not watching them do their work.
I guess you could. But it's... Yeah, okay, that's good. Then I was thinking about like writing as well. Because generally the way that you assess writing is by reading a paper or a paragraph or a sentence that's already done.
I'm kind of with you though. Like a lot of the, you get from A to B, and there are some classes where you get to see the whole journey, i.e., music, athletics, that stuff you're talking about. But there are some where the distance from A to B happens in the student's head, and you can't see it.
Right.
But making that part visible is more work for the teacher because you have to kind of decode what's going on during it. But it gives them better feedback, right?
Yeah.
So back to your original statement. You were going to say, I thought you were going to be like, it's just harder. It's just harder to be a music teacher.
I don't. No, it's
Pam, you're just better at making copies.
Can you make the copies? Can you just teach music? You're just
Jack,
better
you're better at teaching Corey.
Yeah, you just do that, Jack. I think though that it is different because it's happening live and it's not written down on paper. So like think about like a football coach is in a practice, and then a football coach is watching a specific position like a wide receiver do a set of drills, and then they're like critiquing or coaching up their technique and the scheme, and then they give some feedback. So it may be like as they're watching it, they're already coming up with a response like we would in music. So sometimes you may even miss what happens next because you're already formulated a response.
That's like our favorite story of like judges tapes.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
When you perform in marching band or even concert band for a panel of judges, they record audio and give it to the directors as educational feedback. And there have been jokes in every performance circle that they always harp on the one bad thing and they talk about it for 30 seconds. And in those 29 seconds after the one bad thing happened, there's like 12 awesome things going on.
Yes.
And no one gets to hear it, or they don't get to hear it because they're talking about it. So you're right, though, is that it is different when you're watching it live because you are formulating your response while you take in that information. Whereas if you're looking at someone perform a task or write something down, they do the task and you can't see what's happening. You can't judge it, talk about it until they show you the answer.
Right.
And then you've got...
Are we still recording?
Yeah, we're good. It's just a beautiful screensaver. Yeah. And then they just talk about it and they talk about it after the fact. They don't have to form it while it's happening, right?
Yes.
So how do we do that? How that is crazy. That's what's going on every day, all the time.
Well, I think some of it has to do with that it's not always a completely new constructed response. There's just a lot of repetition. I mean, you kind of have like a big multiple choice board and you're picking out, right? Because how many things that are you saying in class that the students have never heard before? Okay, different for the first week of school.
Sure.
But with like marching band, how many times are you giving feedback that nobody's heard that before? 0. I'll take what is 0 for 0.
0 for 0. Toes up, march faster, horn up, chin up. That's about it for visuals right now.
Yes.
That's true. That's true. And the kids know how to respond, and they get better at responding to it as the more we go in the year because they're used to it and they know what's coming. The other thing, too, to think about with the multitasking is like the filter of what comes out of your mouth. And I don't mean that in like a bad word thing. I just mean like all of the information, because you hear so many things. You're like, oh, tenor sax is rushing over here. Bari sax is like a little flat. Yeah. Trumpets articulations aren't matching. And that's just like coming at you just like rapid fire. And you just kind of have to take a funnel and like let that all come out. And then you pick and choose how you want to take that mess and put it into feedback for the kids. Right. And you're also thinking about not all the information you want to tell the kids, but what you're going to pick to say, how you choose to say it or address it on top of everything else. And then you say it, and then they do it again, and then you're already thinking about how you could have said that last thing better or differently, right? As you're coming on to the next thing.
Right.
It's a game of whack-a-mole that just never stops.
Right.
Except instead of 9 moles, there's like 400,
Right,
and
right.
you have a single spoon.
Right.
That's crazy, dude. And you're trying to think about it too. Like, it's hard to think about it in like a what's the word, metacognitive,
Okay.
where you're thinking about how you think,
Yes.
right? I'm like trying to think about how I think about those things.
Yes.
But I feel like it's really challenging too, because so much of that is kind of automated. You don't like, you are thinking about it, but you're not thinking about how you're thinking about it while it's in the classroom.
Right.
Because you're just kind of going like you have to
Right.
move on.
But there is a part of you though that as you're listening to your ensemble, your jazz band play, something like that, is that you're noticing things that you want to correct, but then you're also noticing things that you'd like to compliment.
Yeah, there's good in what the kids do too.
Right. So
Yeah.
but you're also aware of that. You're not just like going bad, bad, bad. Like your default isn't that.
Yes.
So you get through 10-second excerpt of music and you're apt to have, the old sandwich going, something good, something not so good, and then something good. Like maybe not like in that order, but that idea,
Mm-hmm.
right? You would have that going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And luckily in music, and I guess this may be true in most, but it's so much easier to show than it is to tell in terms of teaching.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm sure in jazz band right now well, maybe not as much since you have the top kids and the oldest
I'm
kids.
playing my saxophone.
Okay, you are playing your saxophone. That's where I was going. And I'm playing my trumpet all the time. Right?
All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
And I usually don't, like, in between times they play, I'm not often speaking. I'll just play it for them.
Right.
Helpful to have the audio image, audio print, more than play it shorter, play it louder, play it slower, play it faster.
No, I think it's great. I hear you playing all the time, and I was in your class today, and you're playing all the time. And
That's true. I did tell Steve today in class if he was going to continue to be a distraction, I would remove him. I had to come in there and. No, it's okay. He was hanging out with our piano player, showing those left-hand tritone subs, right?
Yeah.
I still don't know what that means.
You know, I'll show it to you.
No, you're fine. Okay, it's fine. Okay, so is that like a good idea of multitasking? Did we hit most of it?
Yeah, and maybe it's not multitasking. I guess we'd have to get some neuroscientists on here. But can you really think about two things at once? But you just go so fast back and forth between the two thoughts. It's kind of like becomes one.
Are we sharing this with our listeners as like here's how we think of this? I'm curious how you think of this. Is it like we are seeking help and medical advice for ourselves?
No, I'm imagining that most listeners go, that's kind of how I think too.
Okay. I would think so too. I would think so too.
Well, and okay, go back to the English class that's having a discussion on Shakespeare. Are you allowed to talk about Shakespeare in school anymore? Are we talking?
We're living in a political thriller.
Sorry. Okay. But as you're listening to students have a discussion, it'd be easy for a teacher to get in with every sentence that was said, but you kind of let it go, and then you bring in something else, that you're not like analyzing every single little thing, but you're like, oh, I'm going to talk about that. Okay, now I'm going to talk about that. Like, you're just kind of gathering a few comments.
And every teacher does it differently, as
Sure.
they should, right? But, I remember you, Steve, helping me out with this in my early years of teaching, and probably not that much long ago. But when you have all those thoughts and they finish, like our kids finish playing or a kid finishes answering a question, it's okay to let silence be the first thing the kids hear.
Yes.
and then speak. And that's like helpful for the child so they can have just like a moment to be still and be ready to hear information. But it's also helpful for the adult
Right.
to be still and be ready to give the information in a coherent and efficient way.
Right.
That was big. That was big in those days.
Yeah, the silence.
Silence is good. So, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of multitasking.
I think that's probably why a lot of people feel very exhausted at the end of a teaching day.
Every teacher's like, don't make me make a decision.
Right.
Right. Come home. What do you want for dinner? I don't know. Just food. Stop asking me questions.
Hot or cold? Sweet or salty?
That's real.
I think-
That's so real.
But then maybe wonder what it's like for people that also are like therapists.
I was thinking that just now.
That all day they're having conversations and very calculated conversations and trying to lead the conversation certain ways, and they're listening, but they're also speculating. They're putting things out there.
And there are moments in our day, I shouldn't speak for you, but I'm sure it's true. For my day, where I say things and I go, man, I wish I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Can you give us one?
oh, careful what you wish for. No, I just sometimes say stuff, and you kind of get in modes where you're like maybe in like the funny mood, or you're in like the come on, we got to move mood, and I've talked on this podcast about I want to be really consistent as a teacher, so I'm the same Mr. Hinkle every day, and kids know what to expect. But sometimes I might say a joke. I'm like, yeah, maybe that was kind of like uncalled for.
Yeah.
I would never say anything mean, but just something that's just like, oh, snarky. You didn't need to say that.
Right.
So you think about that stuff, and then you put it in the light of a therapist, where that could really, I mean, that's different than being a teacher.
Yes.
Even though there are days where we might not feel that way.
Right.
But I think about that too, and then you get stuck on the comment that you may have made, and then you're thinking about that later, and you're trying to shove it away because you're trying to move things forward. And to be clear, again, it's not like anything mean. We don't say
No.
stuff mean to kids, but sometimes we can be short.
Yes.
I can be short, and
Yes.
I want to avoid those moments as much as I can. Yeah. I wonder what the kids think about that. Like if a kid knew everything going on in the teacher's brain at any given moment in class, what they would think, and if they would choose to be different or act different in a classroom. Not like from a you need to know what we're going through kind of way, but just like it's kind of fascinating. You really think about all that stuff all at once?
I think some students would be interested in knowing that.
I think so too. I'm sure some of them are kind of already there.
Yeah.
Some of the high flyers and some of
Yeah.
those ensembles that they're listening while they're playing too.
Yes.
Different. It's different.
I think about the multitasking though. Let's go back to the primary grades. K1 2. Right? K1 2. It just got cold.
Scotch chairs.
You right?
No, we keep going. No.
Right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
K1
You're right.
2. About the number of things that are going on.
I could not teach that, dude.
Yeah.
I could not manage it. I would be a hot mess.
Not enough self-sufficiency.
Not enough. Not enough of everything. Dude, I'd eat like 6 cups of coffee just as a start, and then I'd cry. Okay, sorry. There's a teacher's podcast called Crying in My Car.
Really?
It's like a humor podcast.
Really?
That just made me think of that.
Is it funny?
Anyway, the dude that runs it's pretty funny. Shout out Devin Siebold.
What's his name?
Devin Siebold, I think is his name.
Okay.
Funny.
Okay.
Funny.
Yeah, crying in my car.
Yep. Yep. You got anything else for multitasking? Before we shut it down and go eat our dinners?
Well, I think one thing that's interesting about the multitasking is that when you go into a rehearsal, you think you're going to address A, B, C, and then D, E, F happens, and you're like,
why'd I lesson plan?
right. And then you go back and you look at what you wrote on the board or in your notes, like what you were going to do, and you're like, not even close. Right?
That's why I stopped lesson planning.
Man.
That's true though, but you have to be able to do that stuff on the fly. That's the whole thing. Because you will never have a class where you're like, man, that lesson plan, nailed it. We did everything exactly the way I wanted to.
No, it doesn't
exactly scripted. No, I don't know. It just seems so silly to think that you spend so much time in college, like, perfecting those lesson plans and how you write them.
Yeah.
Because the way they're executed is like, if you're doing it right, you're never going to follow the lesson plan to a T.
Well, I think it's like really hard to follow your lesson plan because what do you have to do? You have to keep on looking at it. You're like, what? What? Standard what? What?
Wait,
What?
okay.
Which one
6
is that?
minutes. Okay,
6.
brain break. What?
What?
What time does this class get out? Is it a
They gotta
SRT
move.
day?
They gotta
Wait.
move. They gotta
wait.
move around the room. What are they?
Oh my
They are moving
gosh.
around the room. Where'd my kids go? Oh, it's passing period. You're like, oh, right.
And then you wake up. You're like, oh, it's just a dream.
Yeah,
We're okay.
It's a fever dream.
It's a fever dream. Had some of those lately. Coming back to school, your subconscious is like, let me prepare you. You are not ready.
Oh my gosh! This morning.
Wake up in the cold sweat.
Oh, woke up at like 3.
Stand by.
Oh gosh!
Oh, it's not.
Woke up
re-
at 3 o'clock this morning. I was like, no. Okay, why is it? Why is this? Okay, what time do you get up today? What time did you intend to get up?
I have a 6.
6.
You're a 5:30 guy.
No, I'm back to 6.
Ooh.
I even in the middle of the night put it to 6:20.
Wow.
6:10.
Okay.
But it used to be 5:30. If you
Mhm.
can tell how things are going in my life. But but like when you have to get up, don't you? Okay, maybe you're not. You're gonna be like Jack, good guy. But when the alarm goes off at 6, aren't you just like, if I just had another hour? Do you think that?
I do think about that.
Or when you wake, okay, so yeah, you wake up at 6, the alarm goes off, and you're like, oh, I just need another hour. Right?
I'm with you.
But then when you have the day off, and you wake up like on Saturday morning at 6, it doesn't have the same reset.
You're like,
value.
dang it, why am I waking up so early, right?
And then you're like, it doesn't have that comfort of like, I wish I could just sleep. You're just like, oh.
That's true.
The body, the mind.
It's working against us.
It is. It is. It's like it knows when you're in like survival mode
It is.
or relaxation mode. You can't like reproduce that.
No. And when you know you have to get up early, it's always harder to fall asleep. It's always tough.
I used to in college when I student taught. I used to set my alarm in the middle of the night so I can go back to bed.
You're psychotic, dude. I
I said-
remember talking to you about this. I'm like,
I
what's
set-
wrong with
I
you?
set it for like 2 a.m. just so I could look at it and go, I'm going back to bed.
You didn't have a roommate, did you?
I was in a condo. He wasn't in the same room.
Okay. So you're not waking other people up with
No.
that. Okay, that's good. You don't do that anymore, do you?
No. And I'm not allowed to snooze.
You set that rule for yourself?
No.
Okay, fair enough.
I was asked not to snooze
Fair enough.
because I'm usually the first one up. So it's not very polite if you keep on snoozing, right?
Correct.
So I'm cognizant of that.
Yeah. I talked to the kids today about waking up. We said it was better to waking up today than it was last week.
Okay.
And then I said, I think tomorrow it's going to hit everyone like a brick wall. Monday's always okay because you got the weekend behind you, and it's not too bad waking up. But
rested.
Tuesday,
We
you
have a
come
staff
back.
meeting tomorrow too.
Oh, sorry. I take that
Yay.
out. Jack, edit that later. Future Jack, edit that out. I'm going to that now.
I know, we get to go.
Yes.
Jack and I are like locked in though. We arrive at the same time.
That
It
was
is kinda funny.
It is kind of weird we got in there at the same time every day.
Like he's like getting out of his car and I'm just pulling in. I'm like deuces,
That's true. He did give me a peace sign today.
Yep.
That's true.
So we'll see how
So
they go.
7:10 tomorrow?
Is that what it is?
7:10 in the media center? So that means you got to get here at like 7:05 to put your stuff down?
Oh,
So I got to leave my house at like, oh, good Lord. Okay.
boy.
Ooh, okay, yeah. So today's wake up, okay. Tomorrow's wake up. Wish us luck, everybody.
We'll see how this goes.
First staff meeting of the year.
Okay.
I got stir fry tonight
For dinner?
for dinner, dude. I'm
Okay.
meal prepped, dude. My kitchen was like that movie you watched yesterday.
Political thriller?
No,
Oh, Twisters?
Twisters.
Twisters. That
My kitchen was a political thriller.
I did fall asleep in for about 10 minutes in the middle of Twisters.
Okay, is it a bad sign if I'm having a hard time staying awake as I watch TV or movies? Or is that just like life in the...
I just think the chronological clock is ticking.
I need to be like doing something to stay awake. If I sit down, I'm out, dude.
I mean, Dad's asleep. So, like, shocking, like Kathy, like when we're watching a show, she'll have to catch me up, the next time we watch it. She goes, I think you were asleep during this last episode, so here's what happened. I think
you're like, that's why we have here's what happened on last episode at the start of the new one. That's for people like me.
Exactly.
Okay, and you're going to eat your
bag of snacks.
Lovely little bag of snacks. And then tonight, our first Monday night rehearsal of the year. It's just like last year when we'd record these before our Monday night rehearsals.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Everything's the same, except we're in a different location and the show's different.
That's true.
Both still got the same hair. Cool.
Yep.
Hey, shout out to you TikTokers.
TikTok, what up?
A ton of TikTokers followed us on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, we got some snarky TikTokers.
Snarky TikTok. Yeah,
right.
Say whatever you want. Because you know what they say about bad publicity? All publicity is good.
All publicity. It's good publicity.
So keep following us, Chops Podcast, at Chops_podcast on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And then follow us on Apple, Spotify, Chops Podcast. That's when you say your thing.
Okay. Well, for Steve Peterson
and Jack Hinkle,
we're out of here.
Yeah.